A very warm welcome to the news. With it, I'm Shifarao Lakao. Do stay with us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed vows to eliminate the TPLF clique once and for all. In his statement yesterday, the Premier said the TPLF is purportedly the only force that has been working to disintegrate a nation it has been governing. The TPLF will do this and that till its final demise, Abiy said, adding that reinforcing government efforts will end its lifespan short. The Premier highlighted that the graceful gesture all regional states demonstrated to send their special forces to battlegrounds is a manifestation of Ethiopia's unity to demolish their common enemy, the TPLF. Abiy assures that the Federal Army is strong enough and ready more than ever to successfully overwhelm its enemy. Now, the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child, to which Ethiopia is a signatory, strongly prohibits using children as soldiers. Against this backdrop, TPLF is violating this important international law. A scholar approached by ETV says TPLF must be held accountable for the crimes it is committing before the nations of the world. Daniel Kasaun has more on that.
On recruiting and deploying child soldiers for a war. When TPLF commits such a crime in Tigray region, the international community is dead silent but acts quickly if this happens in any other country. This indicates that the global actors are politicizing the issue of human rights as a tool for putting pressure on the government of Ethiopia by acting on the issue as urgently as possible. The Spanish photographer who took pictures of the child soldiers witnessed that he has seen lots of underage children in the TPLF fighters' side.
Obviously, you know, whenever there's a conflict like this, there's going to be, both sides will want a narrative told that reflects their position on it. And certainly, yeah, I saw in the areas where I was, I did see children carrying weapons. I did not see children engaged in fighting. We didn't see active combat. But yes, I have posted pictures showing that. And as we know, the recruitment of child soldiers is a war crime under the International Criminal Court. So these things exist.
A legal expert also indicated it is a crime to deploy child soldiers in the war front. Hence, he said TPLF needs to be accounted for the crimes it is committing before the international law.
International law, child soldier is a war crime. Recruiting child soldiers subjects the recruiter to a war crime. Okay, this has happened all over the world. They have been condemning in the rest part of the world, but the international community, now the international media are making mockery out of this.
Now, the leaders of TPLF who ignored common conventions need to be referred to the International Criminal Court for their criminal activities in Ethiopia for recruitment and deployment of child soldiers.
Amharas in Mike Hadra say they are still traumatized 8 months after one of the worst massacres in the northern region of Ethiopia. Hundreds of young ethnic Amhara men were killed fleeing terrorist TPLF. Goshu Melsa presents Al Jazeera's file as follows.
Maru Gebra Mariam is giving to Al Jazeera account of people and others buried in these mass graves at a church cemetery. They had nothing, he says. They were targeted because they are Amhara. The first massacre of the conflict between Ethiopian federal soldiers backed by Amhara Special Forces and its militias against the TPLF army happened here last November in the northern town of Maikadra near the Sudanese border. Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission says up to 600 people were killed. Residents told Al Jazeera the number is much higher.
I had to burn my clothes. They were soaked in blood after carrying the injured and dead. We brought bodies here in stretchers. It was shocking. The whole place was smelling of days.
Brahanu Asafa's family can hardly look at his picture without crying. They say he was killed right before their eyes on the street outside his home. They blame fleeing terrorist TPLF groups.
Tsegai, why are you killing me? My husband kept calling as he lay on the ground. It was Tsegaye who gave him the final blow.
It was under the administration of the TPLF leadership, but nearly all have now fled and the town is in the control of Amhara forces and the federal government. More than 200 young men lived in hostels that stood here. Most were laborers who came from different parts of Ethiopia to work on farms, mainly owned by Tigrayans. Witnesses told they were hacked with machetes, beaten, shot and their hostels burned to the ground. This woman's son barely survived an attack. She says he has since lost his hearing.
There was blood on his head. It was also coming out of his ears when I found him. He was soaked in blood.
Many people like Maru Gabra Mariam, who witnessed the killings and buried the dead, remained deeply traumatized.
Now, Ethiopian regional states are sending more army to the border areas of Tigray and Amhara to reinforce the national army. Amhara regional forces are also preparing themselves to defend the areas disputed by the TPLF clique. It is to be recalled that the federal government established a committee to deal with border disputes, which the TPLF refused to cooperate with. Kasaun Channe has more on that from France 24.
Northern Tigray region. The battle there widening with 3 more regions sending soldiers to reinforce the national army in its fight against rebels.
These men from the Amhara region are ready to risk their lives to defend the territory they say belongs to Amhara and fight the TPLF forces. The Fano Anang governmental militia mobilizing citizens when a crisis occurs.
ደስታ ነው በቃ ሀገርን ለወረረ ጠላት የግድ ባለን አቅም ለመመከት ዝግጁ ነን ተከዚን አልፈው ለመጡ ጠላት ያው መጠበቅ እስካለብን ድረስ ወደና ሀገራችን ያለን የአባቶቻችን ርስታችን ለመጠበቅ ነው የሚሄደው
The territories that were under the TPLF rule in the past 30 years are now under the regional administration of Amhara. Amhara said they have been chased from these lands 30 years ago. Tasfu is one of them. He is living in a city of Gondar to establish himself in Humara, his birthplace.
ዳዲስ እንደተወለድኩ ምክንያቱም አሁን ለማንነቴ ተረጋግጦልኛል ርስቴ አግኝቻለሁ መሬት አግኝቻለሁ and ዲሞክራሲያዊ መብቴ ማግኝቻለሁ እንግዲህ ወደ አምላክ በሰላም ጸሎት እየጸለይኩ እዛው ጆርሻን ያረስኩ እስከሞት ድረስ ሀገሬ እንድኖር ነው የምፈልገው
Though the Ethiopian government declared a unilateral ceasefire, the TPLF forces are set to advance to these areas, ignoring government's decision. In the town of Dansha, this member of the local administration assures that this time the Amhara won't leave.
ወልቃይት ጠገዴ በታሪክ የአማራ ክልል ነው ህዝቦች ወደው ፈቅደው ተጠይቀው ወደው ፈቅደው ይሄዱ ሳይሆን ከህገ መንግስቱ በፊት በኃይልና በጉልበት የተወረረና የተቀማ ማንነት ነው ያለን ማለት ነው
It is to be recalled that the government had established a reconciliation and border commission, which the TPLF declined to accept, fearing to lose the areas through legal procedure.
A unilateral ceasefire was put into place, implemented by the central government. I think that is a good move, even a very strategic one. It would enhance humanitarian assistance.
Now the Ethiopian forces are very much concentrating on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam area, the Sudanese-Ethiopian border. They want to destroy that attention.
The unilateral ceasefire proclaimed by the federal government was I think based on humanitarian reasons.
They are trying to pull in, you see, they are trying to create a kind of magnetic field for the Ethiopian forces to come in back into Tigray and disrupt the farming season.
Welcome back, you're still watching Addis News Hour. Different regional states are joining the campaign to fight against the TPLF. The Redawa and Gambela regions said to send police forces in support of the Amhara regional state and the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Alula Takramariam presents the following story.
Various regional states expressed their solidarity with the National Army and the Amhara Regional State for a new offensive against the TPLF in the northern part of the country. Some of them have already sent their regional police forces, while others are planning to do so. The Dredar and Gambela regional states have lately joined the campaign to back the Ethiopian National Defense Force. On top of that, the Gambela Regional Council unanimously accepted the call from the federal and Amhara governments in defending Ethiopia's sovereignty.
ይህ ጉዳይ አገራዊ ጉዳይ ስለሆነ እኛ ይህንን አገራዊ ጥሪ
We decided to contribute our level best and accept the national call for safeguarding our nation. This could not be left to Amhara or other Afar regions. It rather is a matter of sovereignty. So the Gambela regional government is always committed to back the national army when it is necessary.
የሚሊተሪ ኃይላችን የተወሰነ ወደዛ ለመላክ ወሰነናል።
Meanwhile, the Dredar city administration made a farewell ceremony to its police forces who are going to back the Ethiopian National Defense Force fighting the TPLF. Speaking on the event, Dredar city mayor Ahmed Mohamed Boh commended the gallantry of the police forces in maintaining peace and security of the city, expressing his confidence to double that again in the battlefield.
የድሬዳዋ ጀግኖች ድሬዳዋ ላይ ሲፈጥሩ የነበረውን ውከት በመከት
You, the heroes and pride of Dredar, you need to discharge your national responsibility in fighting internal and external enemies as you did to stabilize the city of Dredar. We, the government and people of Dredar, are always with you. We accept this call happily, and we feel pride when we send our heroic sons to the war front.
The terrorist group TPLF has blocked the humanitarian assistance being transported to Mekelle through Afar region by bombarding the road with heavy artillery, the government said. It is to be recalled that the federal government declared unilateral ceasefire to facilitate humanitarian assistance to Tigray region. Following the ceasefire, the National Disaster Risk Management Commission announced that it has been providing humanitarian assistance for Tigray region. 60 trucks carrying food and non-food items were crossing Afar region to deliver the much-needed humanitarian support to Tigray when heavy shelling by the terrorist group TPLF stopped them. Rejecting the ceasefire by the federal government, TPLF is trying hard to expand the conflict into Afar region. That's according to the Ethiopian news agency.
For thousands of years, the peoples of the Horn of Africa have revered the mighty Nile. Its spiritual significance to these lands has been enshrined in poetry, music, and spoken word for time immemorial. And in a land that is holy to Christians and Muslims and followers of many faiths, these waters hold a place in the hearts of millions of Africans. And in all this time, the waters have flowed with only a dream of being able to harness and help bring millions of women, children, and men out from darkness. Today, a new dawn is upon us, when a continent can rejoice in unison. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a beacon of hope for all Africans. The use of a hydroelectric dam which does not consume the water, but rather allows it to continue its flow to our brothers and sisters in Sudan and Egypt, will finally allow the lights to turn on in all of the African Nile Basin countries. Since the dawn of time, Ethiopia, who contributes 80% plus of the waters, has used 0%. Today, more than 60% of Ethiopians do not have access to basic electricity. Ethiopia has watched as her soil and minerals be swept away to irrigate the cotton farms of Egypt, while her mothers still carry firewood upon their backs and sit in darkness. The time for a fair and equitable share of the Nile is now. The time for all 11 African nations who feed the Nile to share in its life-giving potential is now. This is truly a dam of inclusivity, of kindness, and of shared prosperity. Light, energy, education, food security, and a chance for prosperity for millions. This is Africa's dam. This is our dam. This is my dam.
Now, the Ethiopian communities residing in the U.S. have managed to collect over $500,000 to the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Ethiopian ambassador to the U.S., Fitsum Arega, said the fundraising is a manifestation of renewed public commitment to the realization of the flagship project. Demis Mokram has more on that.
Despite continued pressure from Egypt and Sudan, Ethiopia is pushing ahead the construction of the multi-billion Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. GERD, which has been financed by Ethiopian government and people since its beginning, is a landmark project to the country with extraordinary national significance. Ethiopia collects public funding for the mega dam construction, and citizens both home and abroad have contributed in billions. Recently, Ethiopians and Ethiopian origins living in the U.S. have managed to contribute over $500,000 USD for the construction of the dam. Ustaz Jamal Bashir, with one of the coordinators under a group called Badr Ethiopia, said external pressures against GERD will never bend his country.
The dam will set free our Ethiopian mothers who carry firewood to make ends meet. My wish is to triumph over our historical enemies who complicate the use of Nile for long and ensure genuine ownership of our own water and dam.
Ethiopians who took part in the fundraising program vote to continue with their contribution for the full realization of the Grand Dam.
This
dam is a solution to our citizens who were expelled undignified from Arab countries barefoot. The dam is also an emblem of our national unity. We therefore support this dam with our sweets and bloods, and I believe it will help balance our economy for the better.
The fund was raised under the theme of the Dam is Mine campaign. Ethiopian ambassador to the U.S. Fitsum Arega on the occasion said the latest finance collected from the diaspora community is an affirmation of love to their country.
Abai becomes a great river after having all its tributaries combined to a single point. Likewise, we Ethiopians come together and make our country great, no matter what faces us today.
Ethiopian embassy based in Washington also gave recognition to GERD defenders who fought to show Ethiopia's claim over the construction of the dam to the international community.
Do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Now in our continental news, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has described events in the country this past week as a failed insurrection. Addressing the nation Friday, Ramaphosa denounced the deadly incident. He said since the outbreak of the violence, at least 212 people have lost their lives. Here is what he said.
Despite the widespread destruction, this attempted insurrection has failed. It has failed to gain popular support amongst our people. It has failed because of the efforts of our security forces, and it has failed because South Africans have rejected it and have stood up in defense of our hard-won democracy.
Unrest erupted in areas of South Africa after ex-president Jacob Zuma began serving a 15-month sentence for contempt of court. Ramaphosa vowed to restore order to the country.
If we stand together, no insurrection or violence in this country will succeed. We are engaged in a struggle to defend our democracy, to defend our constitution, to defend our livelihoods and our safety. This is not a battle that we can afford to lose.
And finally, the Rwandan capital, Kigali, and 8 other districts across the country are sent back into lockdown to curb surging coronavirus cases and deaths. Citizens are urged to significantly reduce social interactions and limit movement only to essential services until July 26th. Both public and private offices, except for those providing key services, were ordered closed. Other measures due to come into force include a ban on outdoor sport and recreational activities, while schools will be closed and the number of people attending funerals is capped at 15. International arrivals and tourism will, however, continue. And finally, a quick reminder of today's top stories. A Spanish photographer tells CNN that he saw children with guns among TPLF fighters. And Maikadra massacre leaves many residents traumatized. And with that, we come to the end of this news edition. Many thanks for watching.